Creative field also has difficulties. There's a bigger still here. I've not come to lecture to you, rather to communicate with you. And the best way to do that, to enter into beautiful dialogue, is to make the minds and hearts flow. I'd like to have a request. They can be an individual, as Amita said. So please do start on.
Can I pick up on something you said before? I think it was yesterday. You mentioned Tratak. I believe Tratak is a method for opening up the Ajna Chakra. Could you tell us, please, what the chakras are and how they function, and how the expansion of these chakras can help the growth of the individual?
Yes, basically your question is, what is Kundalini Yoga? Good, fine. There is a connection between the relative side of existence and the actual side. Now, the connection is such that there is no demarcating line, but one continuum, one continuous whole. Now, if you could picture to yourself a vast expanse of color, at the one end you would find, let us say blue, you'd find a deeper blue, and at the other end a very subtle blue. So that same color, that same blue, would go through various gradations from the gross level to the subtlest level. So on the gross level, we will find grosser things where the constituent of the universe, as we know, is vibration, and at the grosser level, we would find the vibration more congealed or compacted, while at the subtlest level, it is more subtler. Right? Now, the purpose of Kundalini Yoga is to try and infuse the subtler level of ourselves into the grosser level. Now, this infusion, which has led to a lot of confusion, the infusion has been this, that they have found, people think, that the subtlest level of oneself is different from the grosser level. It is not different, it is penetrating. They form part and parcel of one whole, as we have seen in the expanse of one color. Just that at one point it is grosser and therefore deeper, and at the other point more finer and lighter. So the purpose of Kundalini Yoga would be to infuse the subtler level of man into the grosser level, which we know as our physical bodies, and a little finer body, which is the mind. Now, how to do this is the purpose of Kundalini Yoga. Now, within the human system, we have three bodies. We have the gross physical body, then we have the subtle body, in Sanskrit is called the Sukshma Sharira, and then we have the spiritual body, which is even beyond all matter. Now, the gross body and the subtle body both is matter, one a fine matter and the other a grosser matter. Do you understand what I go? You understand just now. So, through the various processes of Kundalini Yoga, what we are actually trying to do is bring forth that subtle energy. Now, all energy which exists in a subtle form necessarily must be more powerful. And this has been discovered by scientists, whereby a very minute atom, which is not even perceptible by the human eyes, can be split, and the splitting of which could blow up a whole city. So, we know that anything taken at its subtlest level is necessarily more powerful. Now, within the human system, within the grosser body of man, there exists the subtle body. Now, how to activate the subtle body so that it could help the grosser body is the purpose of Kundalini Yoga. Now, in the subtle body, there are 7 chakras. The first one is the Muladhara chakra. These are Sanskrit terms. I'll use them, so it'll be good to listen to the sound of it if we don't even understand the terms. We have the Muladhara chakra. Then we have the Swadhisthana chakra, which is at the base of the spine. We have the Manipur chakra, which is at the navel center. We have the Anahata chakra at the heart center. And we have the Visuddha chakra, which is at the throat center. The Ajna Chakra, the one which you use in Tratak, is between the eyebrows. And then we have the Sahasrara, which is on top of the head. Now it is said in story form that the energy, the Kundalini energy, resides at the lowest chakra called the Muladhara. From the Muladhara, this coiled energy, through conscious effort, can be made to rise to its highest level, that is on top of the head. Now, according to certain Vedic theories, according to Kundalini Yoga, that within these chakras, especially the lower ones, would contain all the past happenings, all the past impressions, the impressions created by thoughts, words and deeds, not only in this life, but perhaps if we do believe in reincarnation, in many, many past lives. So we, in that chakra, have the repository of all the happenings, the total memory box of all happenings that we have experienced. That is the repository, the storehouse of all sanskaras. That's another word for the subtle impressions that compose man as he is today. What man is today is only the sum total of all his past existences. Now, to make this energy, this Kundalini energy, rise through these various levels. Now, these chakras can be seen and observed, not with the physical senses, but a higher sense. We can call it the sixth sense. It can be observed by the psychic sense, and they are normally centered around the main physical nervous plexuses that are in the human system. So basically, the operation of the Kundalini Yoga or the Kundalini Shakti is the subtle form of the grosser nervous system. And how to find great purity of the body, one uses that subtle energy to penetrate the subtle nervous system, to penetrate the grosser nervous system, and thereby a purification takes place in the grosser nervous system. So when there is a purification of the grosser nervous system, the subtler aspects of the subtle nervous system has a greater chance of entering into the grosser self and thereby bringing a greater coordination and a greater integration in the physical body. But this, of course, is not only the aim, it's not the only aim of Kundalini Yoga. The yoga itself, where the serpent that lies at the bottom of the spine in 3.5 coils, is very symbolic. The symbolism being that it rises from the lower extremities to the highest, which means that man has to progress from the lower self to one's higher self. And it is by purification of the lower self that one can reach the higher self. These various chakras represent various nervous complexes, and these complexes, through certain forms of practices, these complexes are purified, they are cleared of the various samskaras, and thereby allowing that energy, the serpent energy they call it, pardon, to rise. When we say that the energy has to rise, it means that the energy, the subtle energy, or the divine energy becomes more and more apparent, more and more comprehensible, more and more perceptible, and more practical. So, the whole purpose behind Kundalini Yoga is to draw from within ourselves that divine energy, so that it would permeate our mind and our bodies, and thereby make life more happier, more smoother, more joyous, more fulfilling, and more contented. And these are the steps that leads one to self-realization. Self-realization means nothing more than self-integration, where the mind, body, and the spirit, the three aspects of man, work as a total whole that could operate in totality, in its totality. And that means self-realization. Self-integration is self-realization. Self-realization is God-realization. And that is how, through this tantric process, one reaches that God-realization. Good. And so, what would be the purpose of all this? The purpose would be happiness. And every man has this energy inherent in him. Every man has this divine energy in him. It is his birthright. It is his birthright to be able, as a manifestation of the manifester, to be able to experience this. The only thing that comes between the manifester and manifestation are our own actions, our own doings that we have accumulated over a long period of time. So the whole process means it is just an unwinding. That which has been wound up into our little troubles, faults, and frailties has to be unwound again. Essentially, man is a simple being. When I say simple, I don't mean a simple-minded person. I mean a person in his essential quality. In his essential quality, he is simple. And we, through our doings, have complicated ourselves and made our whole existence complex. And that is the problem. That is the problem. Here in Kundalini Yoga, there are certain nervous systems described, the two main ones being the Ida and the Pingala nerves. And through certain practices of pranayama and other practices, the blockages in these nervous systems, in these two major nerves, are said to be cleared up. And when these two major nerves become clear, then the divine energy in man can flow freely and to its highest capacity. And the highest capacity of man is infinite. The highest reach of man has infinite value, and man, though limited with his little physical self, still has the infinite capacity. Even with the limited physical body, man can experience his infinite nature, and therefore these various yogas are devised. Kundalini Yoga is only one yoga. There are many other yogas that could lead to the union of man's lower self with the higher self, And when the higher self permeates the lower self is entirely subdued. And this is not only a yogic concept, it is also a theological concept and also a philosophical concept. And above all, it is a metaphysical concept where one is enabled through a technique, through a system, to go beyond the physical into that which is non-physical. In other words, from the relative to the absolute. Now, it is not necessary to relinquish all rights or to annihilate the entire relativity of life in order to reach the absolute. What we have to do is stick to the relative, but just to bring down the absolute into the relative value. Now here are two viewpoints. Should we uplift the relative towards the absolute, or shall we bring down the absolute into the relative? Fine. Now, the most practical thing in a practical life would be to bring down the absolute into the relative. We must admit that we are living beings. There are certain philosophies which would tell us that this life is but a dream, that we are non-existent, it is Maya, it is an illusion. But do we find it to be an illusion? No. We have thirst, we've got to have water. When we are hungry, we have food. And we have various other physical and relative needs that have to be fulfilled. But how do we fulfill those relative needs? What values do we attach in the fulfillment of these relative needs? That is the main purpose of yoga. The main purpose of yoga is to find, as the word itself defines, is to find the complete union and infusion of the absolute into the relative. And thereby the relative enriches itself. It enriches itself to such an extent that man can become a man-god, and he can live godly values. And it is only by living godly values through these processes that we could become fulfilled. In all quest for fulfillment, the path so far chosen by man has always been an external search. So now, through the practice of our meditations and other practices that we do, we have some realization or some experience of that higher value. Gradually it dawns upon us as we progress. We do find a greater and greater joy. And therefore I always say that if the aim is joy, the path to that joyfulness must too be joyous. And this is possible. No suffering is necessary. Man is not born to suffer. When the Creator created man in his image, to use those theological terms, he did not intend to create suffering. If the Creator's joy and bliss, then his creation too must be joyful and blissful. But man, having been given a free will, has failed to reconcile his little free will with the divine will. In other words, we, with the instrument of free will, have deviated from the path, have deviated from the divine plan, from the divine pattern, and formulated for ourselves our own little patterns. And it is our little patterns that bring upon suffering. Suffering was never intended by divinity. Divinity, being divine, being blissful of nature, cannot manifest, cannot create that which is anti itself. Divinity can only create divinity. If you plant potatoes, only potatoes grow. If you plant onions, only onions can grow. Divinity can only reproduce itself as divinity. And therefore in the Bible we say, man is created in God's image. So instead of using in our daily lives the image that we really are, instead of using, we abuse that privilege of the existence of man. Do remember this, that from the very first impulse of creation, when man individuated or individualized himself, his nature was divine. And through the process of evolution, when this primary amoebic cell started regenerating itself and mixing itself with various other elements that were created at the same time. And it is through the combination of these various elements that these little patterns were set up. So these patterns are our own creation all the time. So what we have essentially been doing, the fall of man, or as someone talked about the original sin yesterday, was that we took it upon ourselves to try and improve the pattern that really was. We tried to improve that pattern by creating little patterns which were unnecessary. The creation of these little patterns can be termed ego. Ego is the real troublemaker because man has forgotten his real self, the real I that resides in him, and has mistaken the real I for his little I, and says, I do this, I do that. When really speaking, he does. We don't do. We are instruments. He does. And then from Kundalini Yoga, so many other yogas could be understood. The yoga of Bhakti Yoga, for example, which would say, in the words of the Bible, thy will be done. So, the purpose of Kundalini Yoga is to raise the basic instincts, animal instincts perhaps, and to elevate those instincts into the higher instincts that are in man, the higher self that is man. And when darkness is merged into light, darkness disappears and only light remains. And that is the light we are after. So, to come back to your question on the practice of Tratak, what happens is this, that we are using all our mental forces, all our mental energies to direct them one-pointedly to a single focal point. When we gather all these scattered energies of the mind, and those whose energies are scattered, do not be disheartened, because 99.99% people's energies are scattered. Yes, it is so. It is nothing to be disheartened about. We have made our natures to be such. So with this practice, we gather all these scattered mental energies and bring it to a certain focal point. And we use the flame or the light of enlightenment as a focal point. And by the process of visualization of that light, we are gathering together all our mental forces. Now, when I say we gather our mental forces, remember that mental forces are not limited only to the brain. The brain is only a physiological organ, while the mind is vast. The mind is as vast as the universe is vast. And within the human system, the whole universe is contained, because within man, man with mind has the whole universe in him. And science has proved this, that if you can unfathom the secrets of an atom, if you can observe the workings of an atom, you will know the secrets and the workings of the entire physical universe. And this is true. So, when we gather all our mental forces, we are gathering all those scattered universal energies that is within us to a focal point. By doing this, by this practice of visualization, Tratak, you only visualize in order to have a focal point. All these universal energies are gathered. And when we gather them, we have the Ajna Chakra between the eyebrows, which is the center of a sense, a psychic sense, a spiritual sense, which is far higher or greater than our physical senses. So with this practice, we not only gather all our universal mental forces, but we also activate through this means the Ajna Chakra, known as the third eye. Laymen call it the third eye, with which we can perceive that which we call our mind. And as I said before, the extent of the mind is to the extent of the entire universe. So, when this third eye is fully open, we can understand our mind better. We that use only 10% of the mind will then, through practice, be using a far greater and greater percentage of the mind. And one day, gradually, with more and more regular practice, we will open the third eye entirely, and we can appreciate, comprehend the entirety of the mind, which is the entire universe. So man, here and now, sitting here and now on this little planet called Earth, can know the whole universe. Now, with this practice, we develop, by the gathering of mental forces, we develop a greater power of concentration. One-pointedness is concentration. One-pointedness is effortless concentration. And that is what we aim for in this practice. That helps us very much in practical living. In practical life, the difference between success and failure is only due to proper concentration or no concentration. When our energies are not concentrated on anything we do, then naturally that venture will not be successful as we like it. And if we can put all our energies concentrated on the object of our thinking or of our working, or whatever the case might be, that effort could become successful. So it has its practical value. It has its psychic value in order so that we might be able to comprehend, perceive, conceive the entire universe. Science has also proved now that the physiological counterpart of the psychic third eye is centered in the pineal gland. Now, about 2 nights ago, I was having a discussion with one of your very, very well-known psychiatrists of England, Dr. Peter Fenwick. We had a long discussion, and we concurred that the pineal gland secretes a substance called melatonin, which is the best known one, and with melatonin, so many other hormones are secreted from that tiny pineal gland. So the exercise of Tratak has an effect on the pineal gland. It stimulates the pineal gland and therefore it adds to its secretions. Now, the secretions which the pineal gland gives forth has far-reaching effects on every organ, every gland, and every other hormonal secretion of the body. And that leads to the well-being of the body. And when the body is led and fed by these secretions, all maladjustments in the physical organism can become adjusted. So, the very simple practice that is given in Tratak to some people is so beneficial that it helps one physiologically, it helps one biologically, it helps one psychologically, it helps one psychologically, new word, and of course it helps one spiritually. Now, in Kundalini Yoga, it also has a legendary story. The story is based upon Shiva and Shakti. Now, I'm sure you must have heard of these terms. In Tantric Yoga, in Tantric teachings, Tantric teachings are derived from the Vedas, and they have an origin more in the southern part of India. Good. They believe that Shakti, which is the manifestation of Shiva, Shiva is, in their belief, the creative principle. In Vedic philosophy, the principle would be Brahman, the absolute, while in Tantric philosophy, their Brahman is known as Shiva. Good. Now, for Shiva, the abstract power, Shiva the abstract Brahman, Shiva the abstract power, cannot function in the created universe without Shakti, which is its female counterpart. There you have the polarity. You have the male counterpart Shiva and the female counterpart known as Shakti. So, the only way that abstract impersonal God or Brahman, the only way it could function would be to manifest itself in the form of energy, which is Shakti. Now, the purpose of Kundalini Yoga is to bring Shakti back to Shiva. And where Shakti and Shiva becomes combined again, becomes united again, there enlightenment dawns. In other words, it is the same as what the Bible says, that we come from the source and we return back to the source. Shakti was manifested by Shiva and Shakti returns back to the unmanifest. So, speaking in legendary terms, we find that Shakti that was separated from Shiva now returns home to her beloved. Good. That is the legendary meaning of Kundalini Yoga. Okay, does that explain things?
Thank you very much.
Just to open in order.
The chakras, they are said to open in order, but that is more for the purpose of concentration. In Kundalini Yoga, there is a lot of concentration involved. In our system, which has some elements of Kundalini Yoga in it, do not necessarily use this principle. But Kundalini Yoga itself, according to Tantric philosophy, where concentration is taken from one chakra to the other, we say that when the one chakra opens, then from there the energy proceeds to open another chakra until it reaches the final chakra. This is not necessarily true. This is not necessarily true for us, in the sense that our practices are not based on concentration. Now, there are certain yogic practices which are based entirely on concentration. Now, we have found that concentration is limited to the mind. We have a system whereby we transcend all the processes of concentration. In other words, we transcend the doings and the actions and the activations and the stimulations of the mind to reach that which is beyond the mind. So, in Kundalini Yoga, where concentration is used, the process becomes quite difficult and arduous, while there is a process whereby we lead the mind past all those chakras, if need be, to that which takes us beyond the mind. The difference is there. Ours is a natural process suited to this day and age, suited to our mode of life. We live a worldly, hectic life, and if we had to practice these processes of concentration, one would have to seclude oneself into some forest and just start concentrating all the time, and thereby reach that realm which is even beyond the concentration. So we have this system which is equally efficient and less arduous and more easily attained. If we had to use that process of concentration, what would happen is this, that some of our meditators that are meditating for a month or 2 months or 3 months would have not even started experiencing anything at all. So ours is a system which is easy, simple, very direct. If we have to reach London from here, why should we take the road that is filled with a lot of traffic and with so many roadblocks and traffic lights? And I've got it right this time. In South Africa, we call them robots, the traffic lights. Good. Why should we use that road when there is a direct road that can take us there quickly, efficiently, less tiresomely, easily, more lovingly? Because our system, in the yoga of concentration, one uses mostly the mind. In our system, the mind is transcended through the instrument of the mind. We use the mind to go beyond the mind, but at the same time, in the process, there is a great development of heart. The heart chakra is connected to the Ajna Chakra of your Tratak, and with additional things that are given in the practice, such as Guru Shakti, which we have discussed many times, it opens up and activates the mind and the heart so that both the mind finds expansion, greater awareness, and the heart blossoms out into a beautiful lotus flower. And when these two are used together, then the process becomes more joyful. Concentration is arduous. Our process with the opening of the heart is more joyful, and we feel greater and greater love. So when a person experiences greater and greater love and the beauty of love, then one overcomes all obstacles more smoothly, in a better way, more lovingly. And that is how we go on. Okay. That would teach me.
Understand you as a training. One question. Right. You mentioned Kundalini Yoga in relation to Tratak. Do your teachers come from any particular tree of yoga, if you like, any particular sort of system of yoga?
Yes, yeah. Our teachings come from all yogas. All yogas through all the yugas. In other words, our teachings come from all ages. And when we say that in our system practices are given individually, it means that a certain yoga might be good for you, while another yoga might be good for someone else. And therefore, our systems are not limited to Eastern teachings, and it is not limited to Western teachings. After all, East and West, or North and South, are just man-made conceptions. India and America and Japan and England, these are only demarcations made by man. And in making these demarcations, we know how much strife and turmoil humanity has gone through. We go beyond all strife and turmoil, and we make this whole world into one lovely, big, loving family. So we do not say that this wisdom comes from the East or this wisdom comes from the West. We use that which is best in all teachings, and we combine it, and we prescribe it according to the need of people. And so it is not necessarily a certain or particular branch of yoga. It is all yoga, all union, all oneness between the relative and the absolute. If going to London is good for you by car, we send you by motor car. If going to London is good for someone else by donkey cart, we send him on the donkey cart, and perhaps someone needs a jet plane. But we use the jet plane. It depends on the person's own temperament. It depends on the person's own temperament, his stage of evolution, his abilities. And we start off a person where the person is. If a person is in standard 2, we don't give the person the work of standard 10. We give it the work of standard 2 and perhaps a little bit of standard 3. Okay. You see, therefore, it is specific and individualized. Specific and individualized, and thereby the maximum results are produced by it.
Pentatonic, very simple.
So it's become larger, actually.
Yes, we're just, one of the things that had me become more conscious of from the letters that you sent us and so forth is that there's a distinction between the personality of an individual and their soul. So for instance, because of earlier conditioning in a person's life, their personality might have suffered very greatly, and as a result, the personality can be mixed up in many ways and so on. While at the same time, the soul that is incarnate in that personality, which underlies that personality, might be very evolved. Or on the other hand, you might have a situation where there was a given personality which was very together, very strong and creative, but the soul underlying it might be relatively, say, moderately evolved, and so on. So that there's no direct connection between each other. It's just
Yes, the soul in man is forever pure. The soul, the Atman, Atman which is Paramatman, is forever pure. Water for the well. Thank you. Thank you very much. The soul in man is forever divine, forever pure, forever infinite. One cannot say that my soul is purer than your soul. No, it is the same soul with the same purity, clarity, divinity. But when we, for the purpose of analysis, for the purpose of discourse, we talk of a soul which is still enmeshed. Now, there is a lovely term for that in Sanskrit, which is called Jivatma. Jivatma. Now, there is no equivalent term for that in English. Atma, the soul which is pure, and Jiva, that is enmeshed, or the wrappings around the pure soul. The constituent of Jiva is the individual ego, the ego that is composed of all the conditionings of all the past lives. And the soul, being self-luminous, is prevented from shining fully through our beings, through ourselves, because it is covered, veiled by this ego self called the Jiva. So what we are in fact doing is trying to unveil the soul, unfold the soul by wiping the window, wiping the glass which forms the Jiva. So all the problem is not in the soul. The problem lies in the Jiva, which is the ego. So our whole process is to clear the Jiva or the ego from all impurities. And in due time, that Jiva would be completely subjugated. It would be completely annihilated when only the soul, the Atman, will exist. When only the soul, the Atman, will exist. Now what gives the Atman, the universal, infinite Atman, an individual quality is nothing but the ego. The flower is white, but if we put different colored glasses in front of it, then that same white rose will seem to us as if it is made of different colors. The red glass will make us seem that the white rose is red. Green glass will make it seem that the white rose is green. And the color that is added, the color that is perceived, is not the real color. It's not the pure white rose, but that pure white rose is observed and lived and conceived and perceived by the qualities of the jiva, the individual jiva, which is one's individual ego. So all process of evolution, all process of unfoldment, in short, is the annihilation or the subjugation of that thing called the ego, that elusive quality called the ego. Now, if we analyze this further, where does the ego come from? What has created the ego? Now, there is a system of Vedantic philosophy that will tell you that the ego is a mirage, that the ego is an illusion, that the ego is non-existent. Good, that is fine. That philosophy is true, where the example they use is that in a dark corner a rope is lying coiled, and we think that it is a snake. But on close examination, we will find that it is a rope. And likewise, we have superimposed upon ourselves the conception of an ego that has obscured the divinity in us, which is the soul. But yet the question would still remain that if anything is superimposed, where does that superimposition come from? What are the constituents of that which is called Maya? What are the constituents of that which is illusion? If everything is light, then where does darkness come from? Now, even illusion is eternal. Now, this is a new concept. Even illusion is eternal. As the infinity of the soul, as the infinity soul, call it Atma, God, Paramatma, these are labels, the same thing. As that divinity is infinite, so the illusion that covers that infinity is also infinite. The illusion that covers eternity is also eternal. Now, the analogy, and this has always been a problem with philosophers, that if there is purity, only purity, and if we regard God to be omnipresent, present everywhere, then where is their place for impurity? If God is omnipresent and everywhere, where is the place for that which is ungodly? When it is everywhere, there should be, where purity is everywhere, there should be no place for impurity. So this Vedantic philosophy says that man, realize yourself and know that you are pure, know that you are divine. That is idealistic philosophy. But here we go through life suffering. Where does suffering come from? That has always been the philosophical question. Now, the analogy that could explain this would be this, and I think I spoke about it in one of the talks, that it is the sun that draws water up into the sky in the form of vapor, And the same vapor condenses itself into dark clouds, and the very doings of the sun obscures the sun itself, so that we find darkness down here. So, all the doings, all the happenings within that sphere or within universal existence is created by itself. Now, why we regard the darkness that the clouds have created to be a superimposition? Because the clouds must disperse. It is transitory, and that which is transitory cannot be real, cannot be actual. Good. There is a difference between reality and actuality. If we take a lump of clay, now from clay we can mold a little mouse, and from the same clay we can mold an elephant. Now we cannot say that the mouse is unreal or the elephant is unreal. The elephant and the mouse is real. But what is actual? The actual is the clay from which the elephant and the mouse has been created or made. Fine. So this is the basis of the theory of superimposition. This is the basis of all name and form. Actually, nothing else exists but divinity. And it is divinity only that is eternal and forever existing. It is divinity only that is changeless. And all these names and forms observed by us are forever changing. And that which is forever changing is transitory, and therefore not much attention is paid to the transitory, but only to eternal values. And through our practices, we try to go beyond that which is transitory to find the eternal value that is really us, that is really us. People say this world is Maya, dream, illusion. Fine. The one entitled to say that would be the enlightened man, the one that has become one with the Absolute. To the one that has become one with the Absolute, he is the only one that can say that this transitory world is illusion, and I shall not be enmeshed in illusion. But we that live in the relative must accept the duality of life. We must accept the duality of life. We must accept the separateness between man and God. Although man might be illusion, but relatively speaking, he is relatively real. It is only as we progress closer and closer and closer to the light and become one with the light, then can we say that which was past was a dream. While we are dreaming, the very dream is real to us, and it is only in the waking state that we discover that we were dreaming. So, when we merge ourselves into that light and become the light, will we realize that the rest that has passed, all the evolutionary processes, all the sufferings that we had gone through, all the reincarnations that we had gone through, they were all just but illusion, because having found the light, the darkness vanishes. Okay, darkness.
When we do eventually reach enlightenment, do we not bring something with us from our experience through all the illusion or relative experience, more than we've had before we went through it?
Yeah, I didn't get the gist of your question. When you reach the absolute, do you take with you the relative?
You know, all this experience that we have in the relative, is it all loss, or is there not some essence which is refined?
I see what you mean. Yes.
Some essence which is different, actually.
It's a very, very valid, beautiful question, very profound. Yes. We do retain all the value of experience. We do learn by every experience gained in life. Every experience is of inestimable value until the stage when we make the final jump into the absolute. So, to the finest relative, it is the experiences, it is the process of evolution that takes us, that leads us to reach the finest aspect of ourselves, which is the finest relative. But then, when we have reached the finest relative and have become one with the absolute, then all the experiences of the relative are left behind in the relative and not necessary anymore. It was an instrument that was needed. Experiences were needed. Life had to be lived in order to gain that insight, that vast, expanded awareness, whereby we even go beyond the relative awareness and become absolute, which is even beyond all awareness. It exists within itself. It is awareness. We use the instrument of lower forms of awareness to become awareness itself. Okay, fine.
Gururaj, to follow up on this question, you said that individuality is retained in an enlightened state. To follow up on this question, to what extent can individuality be retained if experiences are lost, are left behind? If they are left behind, what is the subjective nature of that individuality?
Okay, fine. That's very beautiful. So we are getting a bit deeper now, actually. I enjoy this. Good. As long as man is embodied, although he might have reached the stage of the Jivan Mukta, which means the living free, until he is embodied, all the experiences that he has gained through the process of evolution and millions of lives are still needed. Because in the very form of embodiment, he still has one foot, or he is touching the relative because of his embodied self. But what happens here is this, that living as an embodied being and having become free, experiencing in the living body the infinity of freedom. Freedom is infinite. Freedom is non-bondage. But living in a bound, embodied form, he, though experiencing within himself the infinity, he has to limit himself to finite values. Finite values, the highest finite values, whereby he tries to portray, interpret, translate that which is infinite, and he cannot do it completely. He cannot do it completely. The air is trapped in the balloon of the body. So the separation still exists because of the rubber balloon. But when the rubber balloon is annihilated, when the body is left behind, then the air in the balloon becomes one with the air outside, and the medium of the body is not required. Now you find enlightened beings that come to do work on this earth, they necessarily have to entrap the infinity within that small finite balloon. They have to entrap them within themselves of the body so that they can work. But every action they do, they are unbound by the action. They are laws unto themselves. They are not bound by the laws of relativity that causes bondage. And yet, being embodied beings, they would still have to perform the functions, biological functions, for example, of the body. But yet within themselves, the spirit is so free, and every action done by them is absolutely free and unbound. So, what happens to the person that reaches self-enlightenment? Not the enlightened one that is born for a purpose, but the person who through this process is now reaching home, reaching enlightenment. He can reach that enlightenment and just waits for the momentum of the spinning top to have reached its peak, and waits for the momentum of the spinning to spin off and emerges away into infinity. That is the process. And those are the mechanics.
Right. Is there any... Oh,
Sit down.
is there any experience in infinity, when you merge in infinity, is there any experience at all? Or is it just sort of blank? Or nothingness? Or, I mean, if there's an experience at all?
Yeah. Why do you want to know that? I'll tell you. I'll tell you why you want to know that. I'll tell you why you want to know that. We can discuss this, what the experience is, or if there's no experience. We can discuss this, we can intellectualize it, fine, but it will remain on the realm of intellectual gymnastics. We want to know something that is beyond that wall, because there is a very, very valid reason. Because we have that freedom inherent within us. We have divinity inherent within us. So therefore, a little bird inside, a little voice inside wants to know. It is hungry. It wants that food of knowledge of that which is beyond. And every man has that. Every man wants to know that which is beyond. So therefore, the question is very valid, although it might be for the moment just on the realm of the mind, but that pulsation that's within one, that pulsating yearning for man, consciously or unconsciously, wants to know the supreme experience, the supreme delight, because inherently he has it in him. Good. Now, the experience as we know it, to have an experience, you must have an experiencer. So, there is duality there. You have the actor and the acting. Good. Actor and the act. You have the experiencer and the experience. Now, this is valid only as long as we remain in the field of the relative, which we find dualistic. And the highest experience that we as an embodied person or as a finite mind can have through mental processes would be of separation. The sweet you eat is separate from you. You are experiencing the sweetness of the sweet. But when one goes beyond relativity, one does not seek experience. One does not seek that supreme experience because one becomes the supreme experience. Now this we find in our meditations, people that transcend the mind, people that go beyond the mind. When they have transcended and when they are beyond the mind, they do not know that they have transcended. It is only known in retrospection after we have surfaced, after we have come out of that transcendental state, then we say, begads, I was there. Yes. So, to know that divinity, at the moment of infusion, the mind cannot be aware of it because there you and divinity have become one. The mind is gone, the body is gone, only the spirit remains shining within itself. The light bulb in this light here is not aware of the light it is giving. It is just light. It is only the observer, the experiencer, that knows of the experience of seeing the light, and that is done in retrospection. So when one merges away completely, it is necessary that this body will have to be shedded too. This body will go, this mind will go, and we go into that something called nothingness. Now the Buddhists describe it as the void. Into nothingness we go. But yet in nothingness there is that beautiful something. Now I think I might have told you the story in some other talk, but there are new people here, so it's always worth repeating it. A chela goes to a guru and asks, I want to know divinity. Good. So this chela's question was sincere. And the guru says, okay, fine, go to that tree and bring that fruit. The chela brought the fruit. He says, open the fruit. He opened the fruit. He says, take out the seed. He took out the seed. He says, split the seed. And he split the seed. And in the seed there was nothing. The seed was a shell. So the Guru explains that which you observed as nothing in the seed was everything. That energy that existed, that to your perception was nothing, is actually the basis of everything, is actually the basis of this mighty tree you see. So that very nothingness became gross, comfortable of. Okay. Are you okay? Good. So that nothing which we see solidified itself in the outer covering of the seed. The seed grew into the tree, and it gave forth fruit, and that fruit contained the seed, which contained nothing. So that is the experience.
And don't you have to stop?
We have to stop for supper. Yes, it would. How did you enjoy your meditation? Did anyone feel that they went in deeper this evening than normally? Yes, good, fine. Just shows what vibrations can do. Yes, yes, fine.
Beautiful. When you have a relationship, a male and a female, a relationship together, and both are working together in evolving their consciousness towards higher states, do they become one at any point? Whereas they both become as one unit and know the same things simultaneously. In other words, with one mind.
Yes.
Yes?
Good. Now, the idea of meditation is to become one with the whole universe. So, in becoming one with the whole universe, naturally you become more closer and at one with the one you love so much. Good. So, the purpose of meditation being the development of the heart. Yes. So, when two hearts unfold simultaneously in meditation, then naturally there are certain vibrations that are set up that could bring the two people closer to each other. And it is always recommended that the lover and beloved, when they meditate together, there develops a greater oneness and a greater closeness. It is an irrefutable fact. There's a lovely little story. It's actually a Persian poem. I don't know if I quoted this one on the strip. The lover went to the beloved and knocked on the door. She asks, "Who is it?" And he says, "I am John." The door was not opened. The next day he goes again and knocks on the door, and she asks, "Who is it?" He says, "I'm John Smith." The door was not opened. And then at the third time, when he went again and knocked on the door, and she asks, "Who is it?" Then he replies, "I am thee, my beloved." The door was immediately opened. Good. Fine. So, when two people do meditate together, there is a closer oneness that is developed between them. And that is one of the secrets, how to make your wife love you more and for your wife to make him love you more. Good, so it works very well. So, in the quest for the oneness that we are trying to find with divinity, every other form of relativity also becomes one with us. If we identify ourselves with divinity, and divinity is all existent and omnipresent, as we said, then every object, not only one's beloved, but every object in existence become one with us. We look at a beautiful flower, and the flower seems very beautiful to us. But after a few months of meditation, depending how well we meditate and how regular we are, we will start appreciating the flower more and more. The flower remains the same, but the change has taken place in us. With the growth of our own awareness, we will find greater beauty in the flower, where not only the red and the yellow petals are seen, but that which is within the red and yellow petals is perceived also. That is perceived on a feeling level, and the feeling expands so much that you can identify yourself with the flower. You can feel the pulsation in the flower, and that pulsation becomes your pulsation. You become the flower, and the flower becomes you. So, if this can be done with something less animate than a human being, then how much more effective cannot it be with human beings? So therefore, it is always good to meditate with the one you love, and the meditation with the increase of vibrations. At that time, with two people meditating together, vibrations are heightened and a deeper meditation is felt, a deeper oneness is felt. That is why, even before you asked your question, I asked you, did you enjoy your meditation? Did you feel any depth? Because in that group, in the group meditation, vibrations are heightened and a greater calm, a greater peace, a greater depth is definitely experienced as we experienced it tonight. Okay, so next. Yes?
It's perhaps a little abstract question, but I wanted to ask about the nature of the incarnations of enlightenment men. If persons were self-realized, attain a realization of the absolute, which is beyond quality and beyond personality, then what is the significance in the old Hindu philosophies which speak about incarnations of Vishnu, incarnations of Shiva, and incarnations of Brahma? How do these actually differ?
Good. Now, firstly, we don't teach Hindu philosophy. We teach a universal philosophy. Okay, fine. Now, the self-realized man is a man whose little consciousness, the little embodied consciousness, has become one with universal consciousness. And in becoming one with universal consciousness, he also has the power, being embodied and being able to function through a mind, through an intellect, he can interpret that universality in daily living. The mark of a truly realized man is a very simple test, and the test being how much he can love. How much he loves is the true mark of the enlightened man. Now, love has various gradations. The gradations being, the two main ones are, of course, selfish love, motivated love, or unselfish love. Good. We love someone because we have a certain need in loving that someone. That need might not necessarily be a physical need. That need might be a mental need. It might not also be a mental need. It might be a spiritual need. And in trying to evolve, in trying to find the wholeness within ourselves, we need to objectify a certain person, a being, or a personage, or an enlightened man like Krishna, Buddha, or Christ. So, Krishna, Buddha, or Christ in this instant would be an objectification of the divinity that is within ourselves all the time. So the mechanics and the process of opening up ourselves, opening up, unfolding the divinity that is resident within ourselves, we objectify our own divinity in something which is outside. Good. For example, if we want to see our face, we have to use a mirror. The eyes cannot see itself, but only by objectification of the internal divinity into an external form. Then only can the eyes see the eyes. Likewise, in the process towards self-realization, the easiest path in Bhakti Yoga, or the yoga of devotion, which Christianity so beautifully talks about and teaches, is to channel all our energies, externally to find that internality that is within us. And then, when the purpose has been achieved, when we have reached that stage where the identification takes place between subject and object, subject being ourselves and object being the object of worship, when that two becomes one, when the subject and object becomes one, then the object of devotion can be discarded. The object ceases and only the subject remains. And that is what is meant by finding the light which is self-luminous. It is a lamp that burns, that does not require any electricity or any oil to fire it. It has inbuilt within itself the qualities of self-luminescence. But the process would be to first objectify. By objectifying, what we do is we cognize. Now, any form of cognition that takes place must necessarily have an outward form. And from the outward form, one starts perceiving the inward form. But that is not the end. The end would be the total identification between the inward form and the outward form, and in the end, the object disappears, and so does the subject disappear. So these are the stages. Stage one would be a certain realization or an understanding that divinity resides within oneself. Now, how to find that divinity? We try and mirror the divinity within us outside. When we really find that divinity outside, in other words, objectifying the withinness in the withoutness, we come to realize, we come to cognize, we come to prove to ourselves, we prove to ourselves that there is divinity. First, we thought there is divinity. Then, by objectification, we come to a realization that there is. There was, now there is a divinity. And how to know that divinity completely is to identify oneself with that divinity. Good. But in the process of divinity, a duality still remains, subject and object. Even in total identification, there is still subjectivity and objectivity, because the idea of identification remains. So,